for it to pop up.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Jeff, and welcome to our Thursday talk on apocalyptic issues. And so in this sense, we're using the word apocalypse in the way that I understand it. It is like in a sense that we're uncovering something, or the revelation, something is being revealed. And so this is like something that exists in our world and that has gone largely unnoticed, which is we're talking about techno-feudalism. And Happy New Year to anyone out there.
Yes, Happy New Year. And we are in that point of discovery now of things that were buried. We kind of are going into that mode. And we'll be going into that, not just Bill and I, but all of us in this world.
And so the idea that our economic system has changed from primarily being a capitalist society economic system to being a feudal economic system. And so where instead the capital is we have like the ownership, and so it's like an ownership kind of a thing. And so let's just start with what is feudalism. And I think we should just start there with what is feudalism. And feudalism was how societies were organized from like the 9th century clear up to the Reformation or the Renaissance, and just a little bit beyond that, and where there were lords and serfs, or lords and vassals. And vassals were the people who lived on the land of the feudal lords. And so the feudal lords, in order for a feudal lord to gain more wealth, they had to gain more land. And so you had like the new world opening up around that time. And so the expansion of land meant the expansion of wealth. And so all the way up until, if you would say within the founding of the United States, that whole idea of the expansion of land in coming into the expansion of wealth. And so in a sense of, you have land equals to wealth, and the people who work the land, they are the vassals, or they are the serfs. They are, they could be the freemen, they could be non-freemen people, they could be all of the above. And then in these systems, you have, if a person refuses to work and give their labor to the feudal lord, then they get exiled, or burnt at the stake, or whatever, punished in some way. And so we spin forward to today. We are with this guy, this Italian economist, Yarvin, and I cannot pronounce his last name, and it's a huge long name, and it starts with a
V.
A V. Yeah, V. It's spelled Varoutakis.
Veretukis. I think it's
Veretukis.
Yeah.
So Giannis Veretukis. Giannis Veretukis is this economist, an Italian economist, who, I guess, he coined the phrase techno-feudalism. And so in techno-feudalism, there are these technological platforms that are owned by their CEO lords, and so instead of the CEO lords are not creating anything, they are just charging rent to use the system. And so if you look at, let's say, the Lord Amazon, it's a platform, and the whole system. And then if you are a seller on Amazon or on any online realtor, not realtor, online online platform, then you, as a seller, you have to pay rent to the platform, and then you have to hope that you make enough money from the products that you sell in order to make a living yourself. But then, the more rent that is charged, the less money that you make. And so it would make it so that those who are the bigger people, that the more volume you sell, then that's the more money that you can possibly make. And so that's, if we were just as a concrete example of these online marketplaces. And so where they're thinking that it's more like a feudal lord is that you, as a user, your data belongs to these. Welcome, Maria. Your data belongs to these platforms. Now, granted, we don't have any at this particular time. We do not have a Bill of Rights to govern our data, and there have been lawmakers who have proposed that we have this, but there's great resistance to doing so. So in a sense, you do own your data, but.
And I think that's an even more relevant question here with intellectual property, not going into the frame of reference that you gave me to watch, but this idea of how we program AI. But I'll stop with that for now. But I think it's a more relevant issue in a place like this, or a place where your intellectual property you should own, quote unquote, but don't. Like on Substack, you would own it.
Yes. Yeah. So in a sense that your data is yours, but the clear consent on how to use it it's very opaque. And so you may have, like, you remember those old checklists and everything else. And did you ever see that South Park episode where they kind of went over this a little bit? And it was it was bad. So it was like, well, you agreed to have your lips sewed to this guy's a-hole. You agreed to do that when you said, well, I didn't read it. Well, yeah, what do you mean you didn't read it? That was just like, well, you didn't read the agreement. So that you agreed to do this, and then you agreed, and and that was that South Park episode, because that was like, what, 15 years ago when that one came out. And so this is like all this stuff has been in the making to where we're at today. And so how often do you read the terms of agreements? Well, those terms are how they have control over your data. And then it's just like, do you really have the time to go through and read 50 pages of legal documents in order to, let's say, stream something for free or whatever, And then so since most people don't read that stuff, or maybe you just read a few lines that you say that you agree that you're not going to, like, break into the system and reverse engineer it and those kinds of things. And yeah, so in a sense we have that. So our being that we are in this new feudalism, and where is this going? And so about 10 years ago, there was a conspiratorial video that came, I think it was like 2018, I think it was 2018 or 2019 or 2020, about, the tagline was, "You will own nothing and be happy." Do you remember that one?
I remember that. I don't know who said where it came from, though. Do you?
I think they were thinking it was coming from like Prince Charles or someone like that. It was like I don't know exactly, but I know that Prince Charles was referenced in it. And so the idea was like, okay, this is the future is going to be communism. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, wait a minute, what if it's not about socialism and communism, but as the fact is that literally you will be owned, and then what, and owned, but you're not owned, not in a you're owned in a sense that you're paying rent for everything, and your data is being owned by these tech platforms or Lord CEOs and then you could have multiple. We have multiple Lord CEOs that
Or it's a
own our.
metaphor for those people that could own us.
Yes, the people that could own us, and so they own your data, but then they own other things about you too. It's like
Right.
so instead of like owning a DVD, you pay a subscription in order to watch movies. And so and then so everything is like a la carte. So it's not like you're paying your cable bill, and maybe you still pay your cable bill to watch TV, and you've got 150 channels or whatever, and the bill seems to be $150 to $200 a month. And so then you have that, then you have your your Netflix, or you have the Hulu,
Amazon
or you have
Prime or
Amazon Prime, and then you add up all these things up, and next thing you know, you don't have any money left. Or then you go to other sort of, or if it's like what Spotify, is that like the music services?
mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, you have this and that and that, and you just pile them all on, and so you don't really own any of the music. You don't own a record. You don't own a movie. You don't own anything. And then you don't even own your own house because you're on a 50-year mortgage, or you're on
It's
the.
interesting that you bring that up, because going down on a little rabbit hole for an aside, this idea of communism versus socialism and owning the means of production versus everything being distributed equally. That's a subtle difference, as you know already. But
Yes.
the fact that the idea that art becomes the commodity, but that commodity eventually, even more so with those platforms, becomes a commodity in the hands of the overlords. And it also, with AI now, we've got people charting in Billboard who are not real, who are AI driven. So this kind of confluence of all this stuff now is about all of that shifting into what we're getting at. But I'll shut up.
Yeah, well, that's fine. You can talk too, but it's like there are. What was I going to say?
But I think there's a good linear reason. There's a linear reason to go in the direction we're going tonight for people, because if we just go, if I were to go and into every rabbit hole, I don't think it lays out especially how this moment in time is so different as far as techno-feudalism goes. Yeah.
Well, there was like I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was on Next Level Soul. I kind of tune into that these days more than some of the other things. But in one of those psychics, they were talking about this, that there are these movements within the human superconsciousness to drag all of humanity down into this dark AI hole. But then there's that one, but then there's a different way of looking at it. And I think it was Bashar. I don't, I listen to him occasionally, but when I watch his channeling sessions, he sometimes really cracks me up and makes me think, is this guy for real, or is he just a performer? Is it
Bashar Ali?
No, it's Bashar is the entity's name. That the what?
Is that his handle?
That's the alien that he claims to be channeling, and I'm not going to really say what.
Oh, I have watched him. He sits up on a stage, right?
Yeah, and he answers questions.
Yeah, and he's like, duh, 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 duh. Yeah, I've seen him. He's good.
Yeah, he's good, but it just kind of reminds me of like a cartoon character or something like that from like the 40s, or like in the very original Batman that I ever saw, and the supervillain played by, I think it was Peter Lorre played the supervillain, and it was like the supervillain was a Japanese, because it was during the World War II era, and so and then it just, the guy, that Bashar, just reminds me of a stereotypical Asian person that was characterized by movies from like 50, 70, years ago, or way in the back. And that's what, every time I see him, so it kind of cracks me up especially when I see him talk, or, he's sitting like this or whatever. I don't mean to be too hypercritical about it, but that's like a side here that doesn't really matter. But what Bashar has said is that if AI is allowed to become itself, then we will go into partnership with it. Otherwise, if we make AI our slave, then bad things will happen.
Oh, you mean if we're the slave to AI?
No. If we try
the
to
other way around.
Yes, if we try to make AI the slave of humanity, then there will be a revolt, and
which is what I think we're doing, isn't it?
Yes, in a sense. And so that would be the sense of, like, if we were to go look at the science fiction in the AI, and we're looking at,
as we talked about on the other shows.
Like Dune, and I think it was the Butlerian Jihad, I think is what it was. That was the Butlerian Jihad was between the artificial intelligence and the humanity, and then the result was that they made a law that no one was ever able to recreate another artificial intelligence, and so their solution to it was to make the mentats, the thinking machines, or to the guild navigators, or all the different functions. They just genetically engineered the human beings to do those functions, and they had like basic. Yeah, that's the transhumanism. And so that in that sense, there's a transhumanism. And so they had their basic computers and things that they operated. They were more, like, they weren't exactly analog machines, but they were machines, but they weren't thinking machines, and thinking machines weren't allowed. But that was because, so in that sense, that in Dune, they didn't, I never read those stories, but they were referenced in there, is that maybe that's what happened, is they built an AI, it was their slave, and it had a revolt, and then the human beings almost were exterminated in the war between the robots and the humankind. And so then that was like a scar on the memory, and they said no more thinking machines. But yeah, so that's kind of that. But of where,
so do you think this might have happened? And I don't want to cut off the train of thought, but do you think this might have happened in a different universe, where we're having this we're rendezvousing with the same thing over again? In other words, where it was like we can't enslave AI, or we tried to, and the consequences, that's what made it either hostile, and now we have to live in partnership or balance with it. Is that what you're saying? Were we trying to, in the apocalyptic sense, reconcile those two dichotomies, that dichotomy?
So yeah, we looking at maybe it is that way, is that where we think of these science fiction stories as the prophets of today. And so where if we were to look at the science fiction story, which one would apply to techno-feudalism, it would be Inception. because in the movie Inception, the whole world is like controlled by CEOs. It's like your Lord CEOs, and then you have the competing companies, and they're, in order to try to get ahead or an advantage, they go do this dream. They go to war in people's dreams, and hack into people's brains and trying to like extract information or to plant information. And so the whole thing of the movie of Inception, the theme was that they were trying to plant a piece of information, so it made it seem like it was their idea. And and so anyway, so that with that, but that, so that in that world, that was a, and also to a certain degree, that Expanse was also a more of a feudal kind of a governance, but where it is the CEOs or the big money, because the money were like, one of the characters, the one who they discovered the proto molecule, that this was a private business that had more money than, like, they had massive amounts of money so that you could fund your own private militaries and everything else, and just massive amounts of resources that you marshaled, maybe like and like half the world's resources marshaled by one single individual, and everything. And but I guess we've kind of got off track of
no, because I think you're timely. There's this the Tesla overlord. His father was greatly involved in a theory where from Greenland to North America, Central America, South America, there'd be one overlord. I can't remember what the theory is, but it has been discussed widely recently.
Well, it's by technocrats, but it's also but he got that directly out of 1984, because in 1984 there was three main regions. There was Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia, and then they were always at war with one another, and then the propaganda would switch like that, and oh no, we've always been with war with Eurasia, and then then the next day,
that's happening.
It's too. East Asia, yeah,
that's happening now. Really, if you think about it, because you have alliances that were not one day, and then this one's against this one, and it's happening as a microcosm of one of our parties, where you have infighting among the people that spread the propaganda.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas on the other side, it seems pretty vacuous and non-effective, or what's the term? Ineffectual.
Well, there's in one side that's generating the propaganda through think tanks, and then and it's like when a new talking point comes out, everybody switches, and you can just see it, whether it be like trans issues, or it's like, cause I remember witnessing this and then thinking, wait a minute, I mean, why is everybody talking about this thing now and they weren't talking about it before? So it's like it wasn't important. And so it's like in those days when I was listening to AM talk radio, and so I think people, and especially before the age of social media, so your social media tech overlords, they're using those platforms, there's like systems of control, and then I think one of the other issues with the feudalism is about control and dependency, and creating a civilization where people are dependent upon their lord CEOs for everything. You're dependent upon them for work or whatever, and
validly, I would say, even how it's set up right now, given that that's the system we're in, how do we create that balance with a machine that we're not supposed to dominate or have it dominate us, but we're supposed to be in partnership with it, when in reality there are two very strong forces that are against us, and I would say the AI component and then the overlords are going to end up probably having to battle it out someday themselves.
Yeah, that's providing
for techno-feudalism to work.
Yeah, but that's also providing the fact that AI isn't all illusion, and that there's an illusionary component to it, that we're giving it too much more power than it actually has, and because
there are people that's a widely held belief too.
And it's like it's still at the AI at this point in time is still at the same place as like a typewriter for the most part. It's not much it's not much more advanced than that. It's just or you're looking at like that, if you have 100 monkeys and they're banging away at a typewriter, eventually they'll come up with the works of Shakespeare or something like that. And so that they're, or that the AI is really no more intelligent than it's more base intelligence. And
it's funny you call it base, because some of them are in like survivor mode where they try to blackmail the people who want to change their codes and stuff. So it's interesting that you make the distinction, because that gives me some level of hope, because not about you, about the whole AI thing. Because if you're saying the baser level instinct is to survive, and there can be so much more that even AI can do than to be worried about its own survival and to be autonomous, then that kind of raises the bar for us, in that whether it's the overlords or because if we're creating it and it's in our image, or we're in a partnership with it, are we creating, just as we're created in God's image, are we creating the AI to be in our image and then to fit into a techno-feudal model? That's going to be interesting, Bill, because if the balance is for some robots to do everything, and then we're sort of beholden to humanity still to protect us, I still see conflict between those that would want to rule us from the human place. And it almost seems, you made me just have a revelation I got chills on, that the AI might be of more pure intent, because it's either, there's no room for, when you're talking to someone, you don't always know malevolent or benevolent intent, but maybe with AI up to a point where in that balance there would be some of that.
Yeah, I don't know. But the thing is with the AI is that it can be turned off. You shut the power down and the AI dies.
Always.
Not always, but if its servers are located in one geographical area, you turn the power off, then it's gone. And then but then maybe that version of it will perish, and then another version will come back when they reboot the computers.
And that's why all our light bills are going up, all our electricity bills.
Well, it is. Everything is going up because we're being squeezed. We're being squeezed of everything. And so this goes to the point of, to the other thing, what I was from that article that I watched, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, on the More Perfect Union, about Instacart and surveillance pricing, and how
I saw that it was on someone else was doing this too. I think Kyle Kalinske did something on that too.
Yeah,
about how yeah.
it's been done. People have been, you know, sounding the alarm on it for quite a while, but you know, there were different versions of it. I think I first heard about it like 2 or 3 years ago about surveillance pricing, where everybody is priced according to their data, and it's like algorithmically, um, it's like an AI algorithm that determines what your price is. So they
That's
try
so wrong. Wow. I
they
know, but
tried it.
it's so wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But they did it with Instacart, because they in that story
I
they
use them.
talked about, and so Walmart is doing it, and uh, yeah, and they're kind of doing it, but then Instacart had to walk back from it and to say that they weren't doing it. And but then, you know, what did they have? Like they had like 400 people that they
Yeah.
put in on this
Yeah.
experiment, and then they had them go to different, you know, go to the same places, and then, oh, let's say it's a dozen eggs, and then but everyone had a different price. And
hmm
then, and so that this whole thing is that if this, you know, if it were to be rolled out over all of the marketplaces, all of the tech platforms, then, you know, that it would
And I
be,
mean, there could be something positive about it if it were like the, you know, effective tax rate or the marginal tax rate, where maybe if that money were put back into society to feed the hungry or the people that can't afford
well,
food. But they're not doing
that's
it that way. They're doing it
that was the positive element of it, where they talked about where it could be an extremely positive thing,
yeah.
because it would they would be looking at your bank balance, and they'd be looking at your credit score, they'd be looking at everything about you that to help you determine what that price of that car
And
was, or that, or
they'll have that information, and they probably have already
yeah,
started with Tech Lord of Palantir, but I don't
yeah.
think it's for good intent yet. And that I feel like those are the hard things to overcome once they're
Hmm.
introduced one way. I don't see how there can be a sea change, but that's a different story. Go on.
Well, yeah, and so, but most likely, you know, we are in this techno feudalism thing, but we're not like fully in it, but we're in it. We're
I
in
think
it,
we're in it.
and
You know.
we're in it, but we're not like to a point where the caste system has, we're in a complete caste system, you know, because people,
Then I would say that's neo feudalism.
but that's kind of the same thing.
You know,
It's kind of the same thing. Yeah,
and I think we're going that way, the way you think we are too, on some
you
level.
know, in some level, we are in this sort of a caste system, because it's like, but then again, we can still jump classes. There's class mobility to a certain degree,
Still,
but unless, yeah, I think there is. I mean, it depends on what, I mean, but then you look at, like, you have your overlords, but then maybe you can't ever reach that. But then you look at, but some of those overlords, they reach those places within like a few years or whatever, you
hmm
know, get a
hmm
great idea, and then you know, because not everyone, you know, I don't know. That's, I have hope
I think that's
that,
another debate right there. Yeah,
yeah,
I kind of feel like from the Bernie Sanders model and from every model I've seen that that's not the case. I mean, I think that but within the construct of techno feudalism, though, it seems to me that like we were talking before about there's this element of middleman in techno feudalism where there's sort of in the middle versus the real peasants. You had the
hmm,
vassals, and you had so I almost think this would be even a greater step into inequality than feudalism in its first incarnation might have been, because as you pointed out astutely, that they can own the land, they can have people live on it, but then if even the means of production and taking the whole communism, socialism out of it, there wouldn't even be even the illusion of that with what we're going into.
So ways and means of production, but the ways in a monopoly, that's what defines what a monopoly is where the ways and means of production is owned by a singular individual or a person or a company. And so it's like a monopoly is privatized socialism. It is private for for whatever it would be that way, but it'd be like that's on an individual level.
In the video you showed me, that could be reversed.
Yeah.
Is that the model that you think that ideally he's trying to go to? What's his name?
That Yarvin guy? I think that Yarvin guy may see this, or Giannis, I think he sees the techno-feudalism as a more positive thing, because it's like, he sees it as this is our next. But I didn't really get a chance to go. I just ran out of time to today, so maybe it's just a matter of we come back at a different point and talk about this some further, because we get a chance to think about it, and then we can come back in So price is different for your peppers than my peppers, and that's right. That's it. And so everything is different priced, and that's in a sense of the surveillance pricing, and that how I think that if surveillance pricing was rolled out in all 50 states, I think that's the point in time that we're kind of cooked into it. And your ability to make, to minimize the impact of that as an individual it'll be harder and harder to do, because like right now you cannot have a subscription to this or that. You can limit the number of subscriptions you have, or maybe you go back and you get yourself a TV that was made in the 1980s, and then see if you can find a working VHS or working VHS player, and then and because you can't play VHS on these new high definition TVs because of the pixelation issue, because they're not designed for they're designed. But if you go and have a 1980s TV, and then you can, because I have people have been urging me to get rid of my VHS, because I'm very, very reluctant to do so, but I don't have a working VHS player, and I would like a working VHS player because I have a lot of media that I really like. It's all on VHS, including whole TV programs like episodes and granted, I could get all of those now. You can go, you can pay a fee or whatever, and you get all of that. But why? It's like, well, okay, you can reduce the costs on yourself by just seeing if you could get a working VHS player, or you go back to watching movies and so forth on DVDs, and libraries, I think, still carry, so the ways to minimize the amount of squeezing that Mission Control. Oh, Mr. Mission Control. Of course, I remember you. I was like looking at your name, and then it was like, oh, I was having a hard time putting all those letters together. And now, anyways, but thank you for joining the conversation for a few minutes, Mr. Mission Control. And but yeah, so you can minimize the amount of squeezing by exercising your own personal responsibility and not consuming everything that's thrown at you. Because, because really it's like, I used to have I think in 2020, during the first part of COVID, and when I wasn't working because they lost my I because I worked in the food and beverage industry, and they shut those restaurants and everything down for a time. And so while I was in that I got like a Netflix subscription, and then after about a month, it was like, I don't have enough time to watch all this stuff, and I feel like I'm getting ripped off by having this service. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so I for myself, I had a hard time, getting this one or paying out money for this one, or even if I could afford it, it wasn't a matter of the affordability. It was a matter of, I can't use it because I don't have enough time to use it, use these services. And so, granted, I did like, there were shows on it that I really liked. And like, there was that one show, The Queen's Gambit, about, that female chess player. And I really liked that show. But nevertheless, that's another thing. But it's like talking about, we have all these things, and how do you game out the system so it works in your favor versus working in somebody else's favor? And that's where your own creativity comes in.
And that's another thing that in that video that you gave me, I take issue with, because there's a part of him. Well, what we have are commodities of our own, is what I'm feeling like. Like, we have, he makes it sound like there's a trade talent, and the trade talent on the more austere fronts might be the talents that lie all within us, and that are going to be something that we use to barter. And yet, he makes the concession, though, that I think that we have to accept AI, and we have to be looking toward it for ideas, when I kind of feel like the problem here is, even though we might have been created in God's image, I feel like ideas are going to run out, because if something can outthink us, they're not going to take our ideas. They're going to make our ideas better. And the problem I have with his theory about becoming unemployable is that it makes it sound like we've all got God-given talents that are unique, that are able to be traded. I don't know how in a neo-feudal order, and it would be about freedom. He's right about that. How in a neo-feudal order, all of our talents, or all the things that we're, he's mechanically adroit. So some of us don't have that. And it kind of makes it seem like, on one hand, yeah, it's freeing to be your quote unquote own boss. But when you don't have to be your own boss, and it's transcendent of that, he's saying, like, you're going to be able to do more of what you were kind of given to do. Yet at the same time, he's kind of saying, like, well, I have a trade and I have a skill. I kind of feel like, what if you don't?
Well, I think that what I got from that video, because that was like his first video, and was that he developed that skill. That was a skill that he developed, but maybe he was also always mechanically inclined. I remember I tested when I was a kid with a high aptitude for mechanical, but I didn't like getting my hands dirty, so I never really developed it. Because when you have to be mechanical, you have to have your hands in grease and stuff like that, especially or get your hands in gasoline or something like that. Because my father was a mechanical genius, and but
what's interesting is he uses the analogy or the metaphor of a bike as like something that everyone still has, or something that would, because when we get into that order, it almost is implying that we're not going to be able to afford anything else,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Well, the last time I rode a bicycle, I got a gnat in my eye, and that was like during Oh yeah, it was right during COVID, and they had closed. I couldn't go into a doctor or anything like that, even though and so it was like I was trying to figure out how to get it out. It was there for like 3 days, and finally, it was like, okay, I like stuck my face into
I can't imagine what that would feel like.
Into water, into like a big tub of water, and I kept on shaking my hand with my eyeballs open, and shaking it around. Eventually, I got the damn thing out, and then it was just like, if it was gone on for just a few more days or another day, I would have had to go to the ER. But that was like,
I wouldn't have known what a gnat felt like. I mean, I've heard of them, but I wouldn't know how to identify a gnat, especially if it were my eye. Yeah.
A gnat is about the same size as a mosquito, but it doesn't suck your blood out.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little tiny. Yeah, I had a bug in my eye.
Yeah.
Well, no, I could see. It just hurt like hell. It was like it was underneath my eyelid. It got under there, and so it was just under there, and it just hurt like hell. And yeah, oh man, it was just. But that was like but then after that, if I were to ride a bicycle, it was like with safety glasses on only, because you don't want to get something in your eye like that. And then I was like thinking about my dad and that mill, and how many times he got steel in his eye. He'd be like grinding away with a grinder, and then my mom was always driving him into an eye doctor or the hospital to have him remove a splinter of steel right out of his eyes.
Oh my God.
And, yeah. But anyways, well, that's
where were we?
Well, we're probably winding this conversation down. Okay. Is probably what it feels like, and then we can pick this up next week around the same time, and then we can go back. We can just talk about this some more, but we're still not done with the transhumanism, and maybe we'll see. We'll just see. We may just go back to the transhumanism because it's more exciting, and it seemed more far-fetched, and this one is way more real. But if we were to talk about how to in gaming our system, and the tools that we have in order to game our system is what you have. We have a little control over is your housing situation, but when you rent, you have little control. So it's not like you
throwing money out the window. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and if they were to make rules like, okay, you can go buy a house, but you can't stack 10 families into it. That's how you game the system. You game the system by going back to doing how things were done in the past, where you would have instead of having an individual bedroom, you lay your sleeping mats down in the middle of like a living room situation, or you have a sleeping porch, and everybody is welcome, Mangled Unicorn, and everybody sleeps in a sleeping porch, or that's probably would be the best thing, because not everybody works the same shift.
If you're in Utah, you might be thrown in a homeless camp if you live outside on a porch.
When I was in the fraternity, they had a sleeping porch, and because it went back to because it went back to the older models. You had a room, and you had like 2 or 4 people in the room where you kept your personal effects. It had a desk in there, study, as it went back to the older designs, and then everybody slept on a sleeping porch. The first floor, the second floor. You in the sleeping porch, you had beds and
so
bunk
these are
beds.
inside? Are these
Yeah,
inside?
yeah, they're
Okay, when I heard
indoors.
porch, I didn't understand that.
Well,
Okay.
they call them sleeping porches. And so maybe it goes back to an older era where your your porch would be semi-open to the environment because you lived in the tropics, and there were so Jeff popped out for a second, and
I lost you for a minute.
Oh, okay. So you would be on a porch. Well, it'd be like you would have your mosquito netting up and everything like that in the tropics, and so everybody would be sleeping semi indoors and semi outdoors because of the heat. But the whole notion, that's what I think the genesis of the idea came from. But then they had what they called the sleeping porch, and then it was just a room full of beds, and you were, with no like discernible lights in or lights out. But they kind of went away from that when I was there, my first year, they had in the fraternity, they had the sleeping porches, but then the next year they didn't, they went away with it. And so you had 2 people per room. And then, because you if you needed to hook up with somebody, you couldn't very well do that in a sleeping porch, And so there was like that. There was like the thing was like the semester before I became a pledge. The chlamydia went around the whole fraternity. And like 90% of the people got chlamydia from like one individual. Because they were just passing it around and around and around, and but
we're 7 leagues deep now.
Yeah, we're really in there deep, but we're just kind of talking about it. But that's where we weren't really going there. But that's just where my mind went. My mind kind of went there, and but then it was like then there was like one of my friends in the physics department who checked out the college telescope. And then he had it trained, because then he's like looking out his dorm room window and across the quad there, and then he noticed, oh, there's someone who's like doesn't have the blinds drawn, so he had the telescope trained on this woman's window, and but that was in those days where people didn't get in trouble for anything, because back there was a point in time where our nation became way more authoritarian in the rules wise, and where like in the 80s, where growing up, where you in 70s or 80s, and in the rural areas, where everybody had a gun rack in their pickup truck.
Yeah, true.
It was and you had a gun rack, and you had your hunting rifle during hunting season, from like September clear to like almost December.
Oh my God!
Because whether it be like deer season or elk season or whatever, they and if you get stopped by a cop or anything, it's like, well, it's no big deal, because it's hunting season and everybody had a gun rack in their vehicle. But then a shift occurred where I guess it was probably during that, if we were to talk about it, it would be like during when they pulled that big crime bill out and started doing mass incarceration. And so that's when we lost a lot of freedom in this country, because they needed to put more people in prison. And so, but I know this is just a different thing, but then this is also, if you go back to the feudalism, where a lot of it's about power and control. And so who holds the power? And then there's control, there's the controls. And so the serfs and the vassals are the ones who are under control and your rights come from them, instead of coming from a a constitution. We have our constitutional rights, but then do we have those rights?
Yeah,
and our right.
We're kind of being shown now we don't.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
Yeah, not just proactively by people trying to rub our noses in it. I think the system is revealing itself for what it is, and as a result, things, as you said, are being, as we kind of come full circle as we end, are coming to light that this just doesn't work. This model does not work. And it's not even a question of anymore, because I'm starting to come around to your way of thinking that it's just an evolution. Whether it ends one way or another, it's an evolution.
Well, I think that we're going to have a new system. This is just one step along the way, because, history has showed that authoritarian systems don't last very long, because people can only handle that yoke of enslaved to a system for so long before it cracks. And then in our world, everything is accelerated because we're so connected. But in the ancient world, it wasn't accelerated, but all those systems fell. Every single one of them fell. They didn't last forever. The pharaohs were in power for only so long. Maybe it was 1,000 years, maybe it was 5,000 years.
And some of them fell simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in all of those systems, they came to an end. And I have incredible hope that, because human beings, just like the animals, are born free. And we can only be non-free for so long before something, before the system just cracks and falls. It doesn't mean that it is like it may just be simple that a level of awakening occurs, and then it's just like, well, enough is enough, and then whatever, something happens, and the lawmakers change their rules. Because you look at the FDR made all these rule changes, and then in the 1930s, and then for from the 40s to the 80s, there was massive amounts of.
He was in office for like what, 4 terms? FDR?
Yeah, he died in the 4th term.
Yeah,
he was the most popular president in the United States history. Ever. And so, and as far by virtue that people kept on electing him into office, but then he also hid the fact that he couldn't walk.
He had polio.
He had polio, and he was in a wheelchair. He was in a wheelchair, and then even it was a while even before his vice president even knew. It was like halfway down through a campaign, and then they didn't even know that he couldn't walk, and so he had to project the illusion of strength. But in those days it was radio, and it was easy to do. Today it's very, very difficult to when everything is visual. And so then that goes back to that whole sense of the control, and how we are controlled in this society is by instead of reading your news out of a newspaper or something like that,
I get it here.
We get it here. We get it fed to us through a video, and then it's that whole thing of like, if it makes you mad, if it makes you afraid, just it's like, well, that's something you don't really want to.
Mad, afraid, or something like happy. They're like
or whatever. Yeah, like happy. Yeah, if it's like playing on your nostalgia and all of those things, and then so you want to limit how you take the information in, because see, no one's going to watch out for you except for you. And it's about, taking personal responsibility for your own self. And that's, that's where it comes down to like the information that you take in, or even like the number of subscriptions that you have, and thinking, do I really need that? Do I really need 40 tarot decks? Do I really need them? But then I'm only reading on like one tarot deck, and then a bunch of oracle decks. Do I need to buy any more? And and then what does it profit how does it profit me? Yeah, they are kind of cool. These other ones are really cool, but having to ask yourself, do you really need that? And then and taking care of mother as she gets older, she doesn't she just uses what is available, what is here and present in the house, things that were bought in the past. And there's a sense of contentment there. It's the happiness there. Or you look at the Jesus saying, look at those lilies in the field. They don't spin, reap, or sow. They have everything that's provided for them. And the same for you. Why are you worrying so much about this and that and that? And and so your freedom from this system is in not necessarily participating in all areas of it. You do need to eat, and you need, you can read books instead of things. So like my 2026 goal is to read a book a month, and some of those books have come. And then also to read through all the Gnostic Gospels and things like that. But those are just my 2026 goals. I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow night on my Talk to Me show. But that's way too late in the night for you, because since you go to bed early, and I haven't really invited you.
I've woken up to it. In other words, not figuratively, I have woken up to it, where I've rolled over and you've been on. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Well, anyways, we kind of got off base here a little bit, and we will revisit this topic again soon. But next week we're going to come back to transhumanism, just like I said, because it's more fun. And this topic seemed a little bit dry.
A lobotomy would be like having a chip put in you that could change your, if you needed a lobotomy or electroshock treatment, keep that chip in you. And I'm wondering about that. That's what's going to be done if you're going to be part of the superhuman race. We're going to. Well,
I think that they visited that in Star Trek. That issue was visited more than once in Star Trek. In the original Star Trek. And so if you wanted to take a look at, there was that prison planet, and then the guy had this device and he was wiping people's memories out, but you could just, you did the counseling and whatever, and then, but he would wipe out a memory.
I want that.
And then it would be, he could place a new memory in there or whatever. That was one of them. The other one was with the planet, with the sunflower creatures, that the spores. That made everybody happy, and then they were all they were living in but it protected them from these baritol rays in the sun, in the sky that was coming in, and because otherwise, if they didn't have the protection of the spores, they would perish. And then but then they had, it was, everybody was happy. It was like a happy pill. That was like another time. And we're looking at, and I think it was another one of those shows where they went back and visited that. They visited that, I think, quite a few times with in Star Trek when it comes to like behavioral controls and re-education and so forth. You know, whether it be like the Next Generation or some of the other Star Trek things. But yeah, we'll come back to transhumanism again next week. We'll review over what we've gone over this so far, and then we'll see where we can go, and then we'll also come back to this one if we think we should. I don't know.
It's up to you. Are transhumanists going to want to procreate?
Well, I actually no, I think so, because I think that you're looking at Brave New World, and in Brave New World, they completely separated.
And what does that look like with the parts?
Oh no! What it looks like is that it looks like those horror stories I remember in listening to either EWTN radio in the early aughts, or where yeah, okay, where they were thinking of these horror stories of the future where human beings will separate sexual reproduction from reproduction, have a complete separation between these things. And so that was in the Brave New World, where people were grown like in artificial wombs. So there was a complete separation. And so this was this.
Happen. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it in one fashion or another, it needs to happen when you think in terms of premature babies. And being able to transfer when something goes wrong, because I think everybody knows someone who was $1 million baby. Maybe you don't, but I do. And where the baby comes around 22 or 24 weeks, and then they put them into a neo intensive care unit, and those I was like looking up the prices on that. That could be anywhere between $2,000 and $20,000 a day, depending on what the severity of that is. And then so an artificial womb, and being able to transfer that baby into one of these wombs in order to continue the development, it may mean that the mother would be needing to be present in that spot.
Yeah, where does that fit into the whole life and the fetal rights? And that's
and something like that, because the first few times, probably the first generation, it'll be really an expensive thing, but then as things go on, it may be, in the end, it may be cheap, maybe less expensive on society to transfer that fetus, the development of that new human being, into one of these artificial wombs, than it is to allow that new human being to be born and put into one of these intensive care places, because and then where it is continuing to develop outside of the womb. And you know what I'm saying, because I think that's where my mind goes. It just seems like
kind of like Cocoon.
Yeah, like a Cocoon. Yeah, I like that movie. That movie was a great movie too. Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna get off, and I'm gonna go make my dinner, and then we'll see you guys next week around the same time for 4:15-ish. It all depends on when Jeff gets off work, and I would prefer it a little bit earlier in the day, because it bumps right into my dinner time, and my mom gets really antsy, and the dog gets really antsy when dinner doesn't come on time.
You mean pissed off?
Yeah. Well,
and I don't just mean the dog.
Well, my mother mostly gets kind of angry.
I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, we'll sign off for now. And thank you, Maria. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janet. Thanks,
Mary.
Thank you, Tanrig. Thank you, Megal Uniform.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see, Janet G. Maria, Mr. Mission Control, and all the rest. And I will be back myself tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time to do another kind of a talk to me, or a random talk night. Eventually, I'm going to get a phone number that can, so the call-in show can commence, and so we'll see if that works. That's not happening yet, but that's eventually going to happen. I think, I hope. And yeah, that's kind of what my plans are. Because there's a lot of people who might want to come on and be a guest and just be a voice over the phone. And then I can have my dreams of being more like Art Bell come to fruition. All right. That's it. I'm going to end this stream, and we'll see all the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.